Welcome to Movie Speeching. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take good care. Terminator Salvation is the name of the movie. Please like and subscribe to get every update. In 2003 in Texas, Marcus is in his jail cell holding up for his execution. He's gone by specialist Kogan, who inquires him in case he needs to give his body to science. Marcus concurs in case she pays him with a kiss, which he takes from her without holding up for in reply. After he signs the printed material, he is given the deadly infusion and passes on, whereas looking at Kogan. Early within the 21st century, a military defense program known as Skynet gets to be self-aware and decides society may be a danger, so it assaults humankind on an occasion afterward known as Judgment Day. The survivors at that point start working together to battle, so Skynet reacts by building eliminators, robots modified to chase down humans. In 2018, numerous rebels accept that their key to salvation could be a warrior named John, who is as of now drawing nearer a Skynet office with his group. The security framework instantly opens fire on them, so they arrive the choppers and begin cautious maneuvers, whereas John shoots an eliminator caught by a helicopter. At that point, John and some rebels climb down a gap to enter the deserted office, where they're before long assaulted by a huge security robot. By shooting all together, they rapidly bring it down and keep going, kicking down an entryway to get to an ancient lab. They're appalled to discover a bunch of human bodies utilized for tests counting Marcus. The one's interior cells are still competent of moving, but they as it were conversation and snarls. Checking the computer, they find this was an unused venture to form an unused demonstrative eliminator and send all the intel to the pioneers. A short time later, John returns to the surface to check on the troops guarding their choppers, as it were to find they've all been slaughtered. There's a huge Skynet airship flying absent, so he surges to a helicopter to go after it. As before long as he takes off, the office blows up and slaughters all the other rebels, taking off John as the only survivor from the mission. The shockwave causes John's helicopter to lose control and crash on the ground. John is fine and tries to require a minute to lament, but he closes up assaulted by the eliminator he harmed earlier. After being tossed to the ground, John opens fire, as it were for the robot to toss him against the fallen helicopter. Its weapons are still working in spite of the fact that, so John rapidly takes over and crushes the eliminator with a number of shots. Before long, John is picked up by another bunch of rebels, and without further ado, after he takes off, it's uncovered that Marcus has woken up and survived the blast. Ignorant that he's within the future presently, Marcus takes the clothes from a dead revolt and meanders absent to discover civilization. In the meantime, John inquires to be taken to Resistance Central Station, and when his ask is denied, he bounced out of the chopper and swims down to sneak interior a submarine. Here he meets with the Resistance pioneers, who do not accept the prediction, almost John being their savior. Much appreciated to the data John's group sent from the office, the pioneers have found a covered-up recurrence that seem potentially shut down Skynet for great, so John volunteers to test it on more progressed machines. The Resistance has moreover intercepted a transmission from Skynet with a slaughter list caution that all the pioneers will be dead in 4 days. John is moment on the list, and in to begin with put is Kyle, the fellow who will travel to the past to end up John's father. A short time later, John returns to his home base and learns that they've overseen to recover a long robot claw, which denies to be subdued. They've already burned out his transmitter to halt it from reaching Skynet, but it can still get signals. The rebels actuate the program from the office, and after a few battle, the claw finally stops moving. The group instantly ties it down, but they moreover find that on the off chance that they turn off the signal, it'll be alert once more, so it must be played always. Whereas the claw scans John's confront, he reports he'll test the program on something greater. In the interim, Marcus makes his way through the Forsake and arrives in Los Angeles, as it were to find the city is in ruins. As he strolls down the lanes, he sees a figure within the distance and tries to form contact, but it's a robot that promptly opens fire on him. All of a sudden, Marcus is pushed to the side by a secretive fellow, who lets the robot detonate a couple of things and waits for it to be on the proper spot to enact his trap and take off him hanging. This guy turns out to be Kyle, who tells Marcus to take after him to outlive. The twosome runs absent as the robot opens fire once more, covering up interior in deserted building with a young lady named Star. When the robot oversees to free itself and comes after them, Star drops another trap on it, smashing it. A while later, Kyle debilitates Marcus with a weapon, denouncing him of murdering the revolt he took that coat from. Marcus immediately incapacitates him and gives the weapon back to demonstrate he's great, so presently Kyle must clarify Judgment Day to him. At that minute, a Skynet airplane passes by and brings down the building, but the trio moves to security fair in time. Traveling at night isn't prescribed, so the gather rests for presently, and Marcus instructs Kyle how to incapacitate an adversary. Marcus too oversees to settle an ancient radio that picks up a message from John, whose day-by-day broadcasts are centered telling any survivors out there almost the Resistance and instructing individuals how to assault an eliminator. The another morning, Marcus finds an old car and fixes it so they can take off, and contention ensues because Kyle needs to discover John within the east, but Marcus needs to head north to Skynet to memorize what happened to him. They're all of a sudden hindered by a Skynet scout drawing close to them. The trio quickly gets within the car and drives absent as quick as conceivable, but the scout never opens fire. It fair checks their faces races whereas Kyle kicks it. In the long run, the Scout flies away on its claim, so Marcus tosses an apparatus at it to form it crash. All this unusual action in Los Angeles shows up on the rebels' radars, hence John sends a few individuals to examine. At some point afterward, Marcus Bunch stops at a devastated gas station to explore for fuel, as it were to all of a sudden be encompassed by a gather of survivors with their weapons out. They do not need to assist, clarifying they keep their heads down to maintain a strategic distance from getting Skynet's consideration. In any case, an ancient woman cuts in and offers a few nourishment with them. Kyle and Star instantly burrow in, but it appears Marcus doesn't require it. Abruptly, the building is assaulted by a robot known as Gatherer, which gets the ancient woman sometime recently opening fire. Everybody starts running away and getting into their vehicles, and some people get murdered within the handle. A few of the survivors oversee to induce on a truck and deny to bring Marcus' group along, but their vehicle closes up getting shot by the Gatherer as well. Marcus sneaks behind the building and observes the Collector drop the ancient woman in a Skynet flying machine with a bunch of other detainees. Getting in thought, the trio gets on a truck with the tank open, clearing out a path of fuel behind them as they crash through the fence and hit the harvester's legs, making it drop. At that point, they take off the tank with the robot and drive absent so that Kyle can shoot the tank, but it does nothing. Fortunately, Star includes a flare and they toss it at the fuel path. The flares rapidly reach the tank and cause a colossal blast, giving the Gather time to elude. Shockingly, the Collector comes out of the flares and discharges two Moto Terminators that begin chasing the trio. There are parcels of deserted cars on the street, so Kyle has got to drive through them as he speeds up to dodge the foe. The Moto Terminators effectively avoid all the flying pieces of cars, whereas Kyle moves to the back of the truck to open fire. One of the Moto Terminators gets shot and crashes against an ancient transport as Marcus turns the truck around to escape within the inverse course. The moment Moto Terminator makes a tremendous bounce over the truck to capture up and shoots at them, nearly making Kyle drop off. Gratefully, the others capture him fair in time, and Star gives him another weapon so he can shoot down the moment bike. Unfortunately, it isn't sufficient to halt it, and the Moto Terminator begins a fire on the back of the truck with a precise shot, so Marcus starts driving like an insane person to put it off while Kyle drops the cargo ball, utilizing it to capture the motorcycle. They make it hit all the surrendered cars on the street, but by the time they reach the bridge, a Skynet airship shoots at the ground to piece their way. The sudden halt causes the motorcycle to fly and hit the flying machine, dragging the truck within the prepare. The development makes Kyle and Star drop off and get captured by the Gatherer, so angry Marcus hops off the truck with an hatchet to take after them. Right sometime recently, the vehicle detonates. Following, Marcus starts warming the side of the cell with his hatchet as it were to be captured by the Gatherer. At that minute, the aircraft sent by John's group at long last arrive and open fire on the Skynet robots. The Collector takes harm and lets go of Marcus, who falls into the stream. Skynet instantly opens fire on the Revolt planes and a chase results, but the adversary is much speedier and rapidly shoots down the Revolt aircrafts. Pilot Blair launches her Situate fair in time, whereas the Skynet vehicles fly absent. Minutes afterward, Marcus comes out of the stream and takes note that Blair got stuck on a tower. Marcus climbs up and gives her a cut to assist her free herself, catching her sometime recently she falls. They concur to go together to the Revolt base, and they as it were halt at night to rest. Before long, a gather of survivors comes out and takes Blair's weapon, prepared to assault her. Blair responds quick and oversees to thump down two aggressors, but there are as well numerous of them and overwhelm her. At that minute, Marcus comes out as well and breaks a bit of wood on a fellow to create him let go of Blair. At that point, he continues to defeat everybody up. After cutting a man, he employments another one as a shield from an approaching bullet sometime recently beating up the shooter. When he's almost to kill the last fellow, Blair shoots his leg to begin with to keep him at inlet. Meanwhile, John and a companion want to test the modern flag on greater machines, so they make an blast to induce the enemy's consideration. When a Skynet airplane arrives, they turn on the flag and observe how the plane starts wobbling and slowly goes down until it crashes on the ground. John promptly blows it up with a rocket, and after that contacts the resistance pioneers to provide them the great news and make a range of assault. In any case, when John notices the human detainees, the pioneers hang up on him. Talking of the detainees, they're taken to a colossal Skynet office and bolted up behind wall. When one of them tries to elude by climbing, the robots shoot him down. Afterward, whereas they're being moved around, Kyle takes a bit of metal, as it were to be detected by a robot watch and taken away from Star. In the morning, Blair and Marcus arrive at the border that ensures the Revolt base with a bunch of magnetized mines made extraordinarily to bargain with eliminators. Blair leads Marcus on a secure way, but abruptly a mine joins itself to Marcus' leg and detonates. The rebels before long take him into the base, whereas Marcus keeps having flashbacks of Kogan and his execution. A specialist oversees to stabilize him, as it were for one of the rebels to at that point thump him out. When Marcus wakes up, he's chained up, whereas the others observe him with stress. They tell him his brain and heart are the as it were organs he's got cleared out, and they need to know who built him, but Marcus insists he's human. At that minute, they make him see down, and Marcus is stunned to find he's ended up a cyborg eliminator, much appreciated to the gift of his body. John doesn't believe him, so Marcus tries to tell him Kyle is lively and was captured as confirmation he's on their side, but John demands on keeping him chained up. Blair tries to guard him, saying Marcus saved her, but the others demand it may be a trap. A while later, a revolt shoots at Marcus as exact retribution for losing his brother to the machines. Sometime recently he can do real harm. Blair comes in and shoots Marcus as well as a trap to demonstrate she can observe over him. As before long as the other revolt leaves, Blair drops the chains and frees Marcus, employing a little burn. Before long an alert echoes in the base and watches come after them, so Blair shoots a vent open and get away through the burrow with Marcus right. Sometime recently the rebels open fire. Marcus covers Blair's body with his own and gets his bear softened, but they survive and oversee to induce out. Outside, Blair actuates a bunch of mines on Reason to utilize the blasts as cover whereas they run absent. The watches before long arrive and open fire, so they ought to cover up behind a crushed divider. At that point Marcus puts his hand out as trap, and whereas the watches open fire on him, Blair takes out their light. They attempt running once more, but the rebels never halt shooting their way and Blair falls, harming her leg. Marcus moves more gradually presently that he's making a difference here, and before long there come to buy and blast. When the smoke clears, the rebels are stunned to see it's as it were Blair and Marcus has gotten away. Whereas Blair is captured, Marcus takes a motorcycle and drives absent as quick as conceivable, making a huge bounce over the fence and slamming. Presently Marcus must cross the woodland on foot, and the rebels on the chopper oversee to arrive very some shots on him sometime recently assaulting the entire region. A short time later the helicopter looks the waterway for Marcus' body, only to abruptly be assaulted by long robot claws. A revolt is promptly dragged submerged and slaughtered, and before long the helicopter begins losing control as John and his co-pilot got to concentrate on battling the adversary. They rapidly oversee to thrust it out, but the chopper is still harmed and falls into the water as well. John tries to save his accomplice, however the robot gets to him to begin with and murders him submerged. At that point John comes out of the helicopter and begins shooting at all the approaching robots as he tries to reach the shore. He oversees to murder a couple of them, but he's beginning to run out of bullets and there are as well numerous foes to battle. When a robot is almost to hop on John, Marcus comes out of the water and battles it hand to hand, vanquishing it with the assistance of a shot from John. Since John is still uncertain on the off chance that he ought to believe him, Marcus offers him a bargain. In the event that John lets him go, Marcus will allow him get to the Skynet's office to discover Kyle whereas he looks for his maker. John acknowledges and lets him go. A short time later John examines Blair and hears her conclusion of Marcus, choosing to let her go. Within the morning, John calls the Pioneers and inquires them to delay the assault since he'll spare Kyle. The Pioneers deny, and since John resists, they soothe him from his obligations. The other rebels still appear bolster for John, so he sends one final last broadcast with a confident message before taking off the base. Afterward, within the center of the street, John plays music uproariously to draw on a Moto Terminator and uses a rope trap to create it crash. At that point he removes the AI chip and hacks into the bike to utilize it as his possessed transport. Within the evening, Marcus appears up at the Skynet office and the cameras do not see him as an adversary. He effectively sneaks interior and gets to the computer, utilizing it to impair the security and discover Kyle's area, which he sends to John. At that point Marcus checks the database and finds articles almost his execution. He moreover learns that Kogan passed on from cancer, which Skynet bought her lab with all her investigate. Abruptly a bunch of data surges into his brain and causes him to have a migraine sometime recently, passing out. At that minute the revolt pioneers attempt to send their assault, but none of the revolt subgroups bolster them without John. Their submarine is before long found by the adversary and gets blown up in fair moment. In the meantime John sneaks around, carefully covering up from watches and hacking into locks. Once interior, he discharges all the detainees, and now he must discover Kyle among a freezing swarm, not knowing Kyle is in a partitioned cell. Back to Marcus, he wakes up and sees he's been totally repaired. Skynet employment's Kogans confront a conversation to him, clarifying that his mystery mission has continuously been to bait John and Kyle here, which he's accomplished. It too inquires him to be a warrior for the machine's cause, utilizing clips of John doubting him to control him. Incensed, Marcus demands he's human and expels the chip from his head, sometime recently crushing the computer screen. At that same time, John keeps trying to find Kyle, but instead is found by the robot TRIP, who isn't harmed by John's bullets or punches and keeps tossing John around the room. Within the cell, Kyle is drawn nearer by an eliminator whose mission is to slaughter him and John. Star appears up and the eliminator gets distracted, so Kyle employments the chance to embed the piece of metal within the back of the robot's head, making it lose control and shoot in arbitrary headings whereas they run absent. Advance within the lab, they bump into John and they begin moving together, so when TRIP comes after them, it annihilates the eliminator to induce it out of his way. John shoots projectiles at TRIP, but they only burn down his skin, so following he shoots at the divider and the trio get away through the coming about gap. The conclusion of landing within the eliminator plant, where they discover the atomic fuel cells that control the robots. Abruptly, TRIP shocks them from behind and thumps them down, so Kyle rapidly shoots back. The trio runs to the lift, but John chooses to remain to blow up the plant and sends the other two out. TRIP at that point starts battling John, who isn't strong sufficient to battle such a capable robot, and before long gets repressed. When TRIP is approximately to murder him, Marcus appears up and starts battling TRIP to keep him active, whereas John surges to get ready fuel cells. At to begin with, Marcus offers a reasonable battle, much obliged to his cyborg parts, but TRIP is still more grounded and starts beating him down, to begin with burning his hand and after that over and over over hitting him with a square. At that point, TRIP recognizes Marcus' heart and hits him within the chest to at long last vanquish him. At that minute, the rebels arrive in helicopters to rescue Kyle and all the detainees. Interior, John listens Kyle's voice inquiring for help, but it turns out to be TRIP employing a recording. Attempting to elude, John falls and hurts his bear, but moreover recoups his weapon, which he employments to shoot a tank and discharge tons of liquid metal on best of his adversary. Tragically, this isn't sufficient to halt TRIP, so John moreover shoots a coolant line that falls on the robot and makes it solidify as he scratches John's confront. A short time later, John resuscitates Marcus by utilizing electrical conduits from the production line. This gives TRIP time to break free and impale John with a steel bar. Marcus gets the steel bar and pushes it through the neck of the TRIP, executing it effortlessly. At that point, Marcus carries John out to meet with the rebels, and once everybody is flying absent, John enacts the explosives and at last blows up the complete office. Afterward at the base, John is passing on from his wounds, so Marcus decides to give his heart to spare John. Blair kisses him farewell, and Marcus passes on knowing he's cleaned his title. Thank you for watching. See you on the next video.